maybe we've already touched upon it, but I just want to get your perspective on it so it's absolutely clear.
Yeah.
Again, I'm very inspired by yesterday. A lot of founders, and they told me that they would hire a sales director and then have to fire that person again because they couldn't actually realize these deals, or at least the deals could come in, but they couldn't close them. And not just one sales director, maybe two, also salespeople, where they would have to get them in and then let them go again, which is just, absolutely something to be avoided. It's a lot of money spent that you're not getting back. And at least maybe if you had some learnings, it could be worth it, but most probably don't. So my question to you, let's get your perspective on this. Going from founder-led sales, maybe the first $1 million in ARR, right? It's typically where you'd see the switch. There's something that is repeatable. How do you go from founder-led sales to then hiring your first sales team? Because typically what you're doing is you're not hiring the marketing team from that point. Though it may actually be really working well if you do that. So let's just take this, founder-led sales to then actually having a sales department. How, in your opinion, do you transition? Let's get your perspective on this. Going from founder-led sales, maybe the first $1 million in ARR, right? It's typically where you'd see the switch. There's something that is repeatable. How do you go from founder-led sales to then hiring your first sales team? Because typically what you're doing is you're not hiring the marketing team from that point. Though it may actually be really working well if you do that. So let's just take this, founder-led sales to then actually having a sales department. How, in your opinion, do you transition?
That's a very good question.
Based on your background with revenue analytics, because you know what data points need to be tracked. So if we don't think too much about the people, but then think about if you were to basically help founders, how do you do this, right? How do you build that process?
I think I can imagine, I wouldn't be able to say that for a fact, but I can imagine that a lot of times the sales directors are hired and let go is because they couldn't convert what the founder was selling into repeatable patterns, right? And that's mainly because they couldn't identify what is it that they're actually trying to sell. And this is where the whole question of, is it a product market fit, comes into play, saying, again, why did they buy the product? Did they buy the product because of the founder, or did they buy the product because of the product? And that's where all the iterations of the product comes into play. And if the sales director is unable to replicate the process, it probably just means that the product is just not ready to get that point there. So the founder needs to also work with the sales team, saying, okay, is it because we haven't identified a pain enough? Or have we misunderstood why exactly the market is looking for this product, right? Because at the end of the day, a sales team needs to identify what pain they're trying to sell for. I'm no sales expert, so I'm not going to comment on that. But the idea is, when you have data points that can help you understand why were we able to sell before, that would help guide, saying, are there any gaps that the company needs to address before they make the jump to get the salesperson? Having said that, there are sometimes that you just have to take a leap, because how long can you just keep counting on the founder, right? You kind of need to take the hit a bit by saying, okay, we're probably not going to make sales so often, but we need to try to get into a pattern where we can get people who are not the face of the company sell it. When I say face of the company, people know the company for, right? So let's be a person that is unknown, but let's make product the face of the company, saying we're trying to sell this product. Can we identify why are we selling this product? Can we try to explain in a very simple way what's the problem we're trying to solve? And is that a problem that you have? I think that's where a lot of companies tend to have that falter, right? Where a lot of companies tend to fail, saying they have not been able to identify why they sell the product.
Okay, then I have an interesting conundrum for you. So I've mainly worked with Series A and Series B companies, also seed, not so much pre-seed. What I see typically happen, even in Series A and Series B, is that you'll still have the founder, if the founder is on board and is one of those founders who, is not just dictating, but is part of the company, right? So let's say you have your guiding light here, and most sales are still coming through the founder. If not closed, then definitely sourced potentially. And it's one of my strategies when I try and generate pipeline is to utilize the founder. And I don't see any issue necessarily doing that, whether it's Series A and then somewhat with Series B. But I'm curious as to your take there, because typically you see that's the biggest lever right? But you also want to be able to scale that into a sales team. So I think my question is also then, from your point of view, how do you navigate that journey? Because if you want to scale the company, you don't want to not use the founder, because going from just founder-led to then probably trying to do the product thing, what if that doesn't catch on? So you have to somewhat mirror that. So the founder has to keep being in on deals, or at least be the voice of the
Yes.
company, while at the same time you're trying to build up your company so it's the product that actually does it. How do we navigate that from your perspective?
I think that is where it becomes important, at least the way that I think about it, is why or what is it about the founder that got them to buy the product, right? So is it that the founder was talking about the product a lot, or is it that the founder is known for something? So if it is that the founder is known for something, maybe you can start utilizing the founder in a way that they promote the product more often, right? That they're actually showing features about the product, which is where you can actually leverage the fact that the founder probably has a voice that a lot of people can listen to. And then you can latch on to that voice saying, hey, you probably saw our founder talk about the product. We would love to show it to you because you probably have this problem. That's how you would leverage it. You would not leverage just the founder's voice. It's also about the voice that he's using it for. So if you're able to like showcase the product and say, hey, these are the features, the cool features, which a CEO is able to talk about, saying this is how you would do it, this is what you would use it for, that's what you can latch onto. And that's what you could probably have as a backing factor, saying, hey, you've seen our founder everywhere, right? We do well. You should probably talk to us. And that's at least how I think people should go about it. Because you should be able to leverage the product. Yes, it's very important to leverage the founder, but after one point of time, we're not selling the founder anymore. We're selling the product. And the founder needs to be able to showcase the product enough.
Yeah.
And I think that's where your building of knowledge of the product or brand will come into play.
Yeah. I definitely see that being that the majority in the beginning is founder-led sales. To make that scalable, you then convert that process into founder-led marketing, right? So you still have that voice. It's still probably where 80% of your revenue is going to come from, at least be sourced from. But the founder then hands that off to sales, who have gotten to understand that process of why these things happen.
Exactly.
Now, going back to that network event then yesterday. So we have the founders, they're looking for investors. The investors are then saying, well, what we just discussed here, they don't have that. They don't understand any of these things. Yet, the majority of Series A companies and whatnot, obviously they haven't gotten an investment and they may have traction, but still, most of these companies cannot with certainty say, this is where the revenue is coming from and this is why. So let's say that, do you have like a repeatable framework to share? Or how would you tackle that if you were like, if you had these companies in front of you where they're like, Divya, we need help landing investors. And then we need help basically being able to scale after that, right? How would you go in and help such companies?
That's a very tough question because I've never done that. The way that I imagine I would go about it, and I could be way off here, right? But the way that I imagine I would go about it is talk about potential of return. Let's say, and this is also where it sort of plays about saying how long does it take for you to sell the product? Because you're still putting in a certain amount of money in the process. It could be either your salary or any salespeople's salary, right? But essentially saying how long does it take back for you to get the return back? That's probably where I would place my first focus on if we do not have a repeatable sales process in place. Saying, hey, we've sold, say, I don't know, $10,000, $50,000 so far. It cost us this much to do that. And can we assume that the customer is going to be with us for this long, lifetime value and all of that, and that we expect to get the return on our money around this time? Because investors, they only care about profit, right? Unless they're really more into the mission-driven purpose or something. I assume at the end of the day, an investor only wants to know that for every dollar they put in, they at least get more back.
And when.
Right? I think this is where all of that information would sort of come through, saying this is what we're earning, and this is the money that's going into earning that money. And what does it mean in terms of profit margins? When do you expect to get the money back? What would the return on investment look like? And I think there is usually an estimated value that each company has, right? I think the correlation between all of those things is probably what the investor would focus on in the initial parts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the difficult thing here is really finding that avenue where it's scalable. At least that's what I hear, whether that be sales or marketing. And that's what you and I typically see with at least Series A companies, right? Even larger companies may hit a point at some point where growth is just, it's not happening for some reason. Maybe the market has changed. But let's start with Series A. It's a company, maybe 20, 25 people, something like that, right? Maybe there's a few hires in sales and in marketing, but they're not growing how they want to grow, and maybe they're unsure. In my case, with my experience, what I mostly see is that at this stage, even with a Series A, they may have some slight indication of which industries to focus on, potentially what people are part of the buying committee, but they have no clue about the sales process, right? But even then, the sales process is somewhat dictated by what companies you're trying to sell to. What companies you're trying to sell to is somewhat dictated by whatever traction you're getting. So suddenly we're in this sort of like this maelstrom of different metrics that are flying around, and it becomes a little messy to decipher like where is that light at the end of the tunnel, right? Like which tunnel do we go into? So let's take our onset from a Series A company. They've raised the money. They have these teams on board. They simply are not sure where to go and what to do to scale. And I think revenue analytics, for me at least, becomes so important. If I was ever brought into a Series A, I would always bring you on board to basically decipher for me, well, where is it we've made our money? And can we use that historic data to point us in a direction of where we want to go? If we made all our money in construction, but we want to do manufacturing, do we have any traction with manufacturing? Is it safe to do this, right?
Also, does the product have a feature that can solve a problem for them, right?
Exactly.
Being able to identify that, yeah.
But can we agree that maybe some of these decisions are based somewhat on gut feeling or on founder vision that we want to go somewhere? At least somewhat, right?
Yes. I mean, I think the whole idea behind a company would also probably come with problems that the founder may have heard from different people coming across different industries. And then I think it probably then, don't you think it becomes important to see what is the strategy of the company in itself, right? What is the vision that the company has? That probably also dictates where they're trying to sell. And then, like you said, if they hit a saturation point somewhere, that's when they try to look, saying, oh, is there anyone else that also has a problem? I think that's probably how people would scale as well, right?
What happens then, Divya, if I'm the founder and I have sold 15 deals, 20 deals in manufacturing? We have that ARR of 1 million USD, which is actually a lot of money in DKK. I want to explore more avenues, right? But I don't necessarily know that all my money is coming from manufacturing. You then analyze and you say, well, Magnus, most of your money is coming from manufacturing with this company size. There's these job titles. There's approximately 4 contacts associated with every close-won deal. And you want to go over here. How would such a conversation go? I bet you that's something that you've seen.
I think I've definitely seen it before. And that's where I think having the functioning operations team or someone who knows how to like get you the data would be there, right? So the way that I would probably go about it is saying, hey, okay, let's say you've got all your money from the construction industry. What's the addressable market? Do you have more companies that you can sell to? And then you would essentially identify, let's say you sold to 25 companies that made up the $1 million. Can you find any repeatable patterns within those 25 companies? Saying, are there revenue beyond a certain amount? Do they have? Is it because it's big? Is it because they have a specific department within it? Trying to find those repeatable patterns that we can then cross-reference across the rest of the addressable market within the same industry, saying, okay, you have this much potential left. if we do not see the potential, we try to use some of the common points and try to see, is there any other industry that also has these potential problems? Can we then try testing out the waters and say, okay, let's see if we were to talk to these people within this industry, does that resonate with them? And this is where all your networking events will come into play, right? Where you try to go and talk to people saying, hey, if you have a problem like this, how would you go about solving it? Is it even a problem for you in the first place? And that is probably how you would try to scale, because then you spread the word out, you try to get a feel for whether there's a problem or not in the market. Is that something that needs to be addressed or not? Yeah.
We haven't even gotten to talk about marketing yet, but I think that's a different episode.
Yeah, that's a complete different one.
But we can both agree that, and obviously we're biased, right? But thinking about sales, revenue, and repeatable sales processes, we can both agree what you do is so important, and what your colleagues in other revenue analytical functions do is so important, right?
Absolutely.
To not only get investors on board, but to build repeatable processes based on data and having the right data hygiene. You sort of need someone like you. But then, Divya, why are so many companies not utilizing people like you? You guys are brought in so late.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
Which I simply do not understand.
I can think of one quick one, right? It's the money that goes into hiring a new person, right? So if your focus is fully on selling, you're not really going to think about, hey, I need someone to tell me if I'm selling, right? My focus is only going to be on selling.
Yeah.
I don't care how we're doing it, we're just doing it, right? That's where you spray. That's where you spray everywhere and say, where does it land? And we sort of come into play later on when, the serious fundings need to come through, and we probably need to show ourselves a bit more mature, because very rarely do any companies that are extremely young actually get a lot of analytics people on there, because sometimes it is also good that the founders just focus on getting some sales out, because they need to get some data in, or they need to get some money in, right? That's probably a reason why I assume not a lot of people think about data first.
But if I'm a founder and I need to build a repeatable engine, I'm selling, right? If I don't have someone like you on board, early, to tell me, to log the data points, to aggregate that data, then whenever I am supposed to bring a sales team on board, I'm literally starting from zero. Where if I have someone on board like you from the get-go, well, we're basically learning, which means that not only does my selling get more effective and we become more efficient as a company, and me as a salesperson, we also very quickly figure out where is it we get traction, right? Because you're actually tracking all of these interactions, and you can do some initial data modeling telling me, okay, Magnus, within this subset of let's say, buying committees within this vertical, you're doing marginally better than what you're doing over here, right? That's a leading indicator. Then let's say we hit that $1 million USD mark in ARR, and it's time to scale. We switch me from doing founder-led sales to doing founder-led marketing, and we bring that sales team on board, right? You're then able to say, well, sales team, we have data that tells us that we sell repeatedly in XYZ fashion. Is it just me? Like, it makes sense to me.
I see where you're coming from.
Okay.
I really do. But I think it becomes really important to think about scale and size. When you're a founder, you probably have one person you're depending on to help you do the marketing, right? As a founder, you're probably not selling as much. So the founder will probably know, saying, hey, I'm just going to be able to sell in this industry because I know that's where the problem is. That's also what they're going to focus on a lot more. And once they feel like, oh, maybe we could try something else, right? Or maybe they have a customer that says, hey, I know someone else who's probably also having this problem, just a different industry. Something switches in the founder's head saying, oh, maybe I can try another industry. I think although it is very beneficial for them to have a person who can do analytics, the sample size is small enough that the founder should be able to analyze those things. When you talk about a process, that's a different thing altogether. But trying to understand where you need to sell to, I think a founder should be able to do it enough if they track what they're doing and where they're doing, right?
Okay.
Which sort of gives them the fuel to grow further. Once they become big, and I think they have enough data, I think that is what gives them the what's the right word that I'm looking for? I think that's what gives them the leverage point where they can be like, this is probably when I can benefit from having someone. When the company is small enough, they do not need one person telling them this is working, that's not. They probably have an Excel sheet that's just going to tell them what is and what it isn't. Or maybe just their memory, right?
Okay.
Because they're not really selling that much,
Okay.
just as a person.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, it's a very good answer. Well, then my question is, Divya, when do I as a founder bring you on board? Because you clearly don't want to get hired from the get-go,
No.
right? You want to get hired later on, which is fair. So when should companies hire someone like you?
Before they hire someone like me, I think they should hire someone who can set up the foundation for it, right?
Okay.
I am not good at it. I can tell you what the foundation should look like, but I do not have the technical skill set to set up a CRM.
Okay.
So that's probably going to be the first point of focus that a company needs to focus on, saying, okay, hey, we want to try moving away from founder sales. We want to set up a CRM where we do these things. A lot of times the founders try to do it themselves because, sometimes they're user-friendly enough. But sometimes they're like, maybe we should just get on a marketing ops person or a revenue operations person, essentially, who can set up a CRM for them. And once the foundation is in place and then they've trained the salespeople saying, hey guys, this is what the CRM is going to look like. You need to click here, make sure you're doing these things, is when a revenue analytics person like me could come in and then start making sure that we are tracking well, that make sure that we are maintaining enough data, that we have the things that we need, right? I think it's very important to keep in mind you need the foundation first before you get someone like me. Because if I come in and I see no data, I'd be like, there is no data for me to do anything with.
Yep.
So you kind of need the foundation in place before you jump the gun and bring someone like me in.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
You really need foundation.
What is the off chance that you find somebody who can both set up the foundation?
Oh, then you're golden. That's amazing.
Well,
right?
that's a unicorn, maybe?
No, I do think there are a few people that can do both.
Okay.
But maybe the depth of it may be questionable. Yeah. But I do think you can definitely find someone who can do both. Because sometimes a lot of tools like HubSpot and Salesforce give you the basic tool set that let you create dashboards and charts that tell what am I selling, right? Yeah. So you should be able to do that. But to take it a bit further, saying, what do I need to do? What else can I do with this data? Is when you would probably need an analytics person like me. Okay. Yeah.
And then once you have the foundation and you bring in an analytical person like you, then we're not just thinking about these, we're not just thinking about sales processes and whatnot. We're also thinking about revenue modeling, cohorts, all that jazz that then takes you from Series A to potentially Series B, later down the line, Series C.
Yes.
Okay. Well, Divya, thank you so much for participating.
It was great.
It was a lot. I think next time we'll have to do it on the other side, which is marketing.
Absolutely.
But thank you.
Thank you so much.
That was it.
That was good.